just going to talk about physical spaces, but we'll also talk a little bit about how to design a culture that leads us into innovation, that leads us into integrated infrastructure, that brings in the best talent and helps us in collaboration as well. Now, GCC is taking up 50% of the total commercial spaces. Of course, every city we go into the major hubs of GCCs, we see construction happening, we hear real estate agents talk about how various companies are coming in and they are occupying commercial spaces. But office spaces also need to be futuristic and are essential to creating an inclusive environment, but also a digital twin environment where innovation thrives. And who better than the four panelists I have with me who have to share some use cases themselves. So without further ado, my first question to Amit, I would like you to draw the first blood, Amit. The shift to hybrid and digital first models is imminent and it's right here with us. But they also influence global operations in a way. In such a scenario, how do you plan for a future ready workspace?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Vaishnavi, and good evening to all of you. I think it's always difficult, first of all, to get to the fag end of session, but then you also get to see only quality audience. So thank you for being there. I think it's, before I kind of delve into the question, we have to look back a little bit with reflector glasses. If you look at the GCC growth, it sounds like a very positive phenomena, which definitely it is. But I think it's also pertinent that if you look at last 5 years, and if I have to ask you, what is top word that comes to your mind? Maybe anybody from the audience, what would be top 1 or 2 words that will come to your mind? If you look at last 4-5 years, what's happening from a GCC, from a global perspective?
I think the shift in the mindset from operating in a typical scale might be centralized and cost arbitrage from a significant shift from cost arbitrage, consolidation, standardization to rapidly towards the value creation, value proposition, and not just the rhetoric service provider approach, but the solution provider approach. So that's the kind of typical and some prominent changes we've observed.
Thanks for that. Anybody else? What's happening in the global scenario?
Yes, Amit. So how does that tie back to?
So if we look at that, I think resilience. Today we are in a scenario, we're talking about uncertainty as the only certainty. There was a point of time we would call VUCA world, but today uncertainty has become a norm. And I think with this uncertainty, we at AP Moeller Maersk were actually, in a way, I would say, fortunate. In 2017, we were hit by a cyber attack. It's one of the world's largest cyber attacks, followed by a pandemic, COVID, which all of us went through. And I think that necessitated the change in our working environment, the change in our approach towards, looking at how should we actually adopt an infrastructure. So I think coming back to your question, in today's scenario, if we have to kind of, extrapolate and project, we need to create workspaces which are very nimble and agile. They are modular, they are cost effective, they're able to cater to the needs of a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, depending on what kind of city and a model one is choosing to as part of the strategy. But also, I think, with, of course, keeping in mind advanced IT infrastructure in place. Having said this, it's also important that we keep in mind very employee-centric mindset. The generation that we are dealing with and the talent we are kind of attracting today, they thrive on, communication. So it's important that we provide them with work-life balance. We are able to give them a home away from home experience through our newer offices, but at the same time give them that connectivity, and then in this uncertain scenario try and provide them with excellent experiences which ensures there is well-being and retention of the talent.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Amit. Prashanti, you're from the insurance sector, fast evolving, rapidly changing, always volatile. From a people and process perspective exclusively, what does that mean for workspace flexibility in an ever-evolving situation like yours?
Thank you. I'm glad you said home away from home, because that shows that the GCCs are really thinking alike. Workspaces for us have really evolved from a place of presence to a place of purpose. It's as simple as that. People look for purpose. And flexibility or collaboration, culture, all those big words, I think it's no longer an effort to do that. It has to just be intrinsic to the way you design your workspace or your policies, and the way you run business. For us, flexibility is not something that we market as a benefit. It's a necessity. And if we are to have innovation or collaboration, we need to make sure that our workspaces are built uh, or adaptable to create this kind of an environment where people have seamless connectivity, whether it's physical or digital connectivity. It's quite seamless. At AXA GBS, we recently embarked on this journey of creating a design, and my friend Vijeta is smiling because we just are sharing the same building. We're in the same building, and we created a workspace that we put a lot of thought into. And I think our theme was metamorphosis, and that was and we love it, really clearly passionate about it, because we had only limited real estate, but out of that, how do you create a space that keeps evolving to what our people are doing, to what their needs are, to what our business is going to look like. So we created really some funky spaces where one thing becomes another. You open up a training room and it becomes like an auditorium. So we have all these moving spaces. We have resimercial areas, giving it a very global, connected feeling. It could be anywhere in the world, that kind of an office, but still really grounded in the local needs of our teams. So I think that's how we brought about a lot of flexibility in what we created.
Rest in peace, Kafka. You would have loved this metamorphosis yourself.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely. So, thank you, Prashanti. And segueing to Vijeta organically in that case, culture is key in shared services model or GCC. And culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've all heard that. How do you see workspace design contributing to employee engagement and a cross-functional collaboration as well?
Sure. So, in a world of hybrid and remote only in some areas, investing into an infrastructure is now a novelty. Okay. And Ecolab took it, which is where I come from, a little further. We got 7 floors. So it's, but if you design a workspace that focuses upon engagement and collaboration, the employee experience just enhances and creates the culture that the organization is driving. I'll go a little, tactical in the approach. And of course, while designing the workspace, we did a tour of AXA. I think they've done a fantastic job. And there were some bits and pieces that we took from AXA. Having those collaborative workspaces, I think multitude of spaces, be it, open spaces, be it huddle rooms, be it, phone booths, etc. Because that gives employee spontaneous discussion areas, or for that matter, some training, knowledge transfer, having those discussions. So having that collaborative spaces works a lot. The other thing is around the flexibility and adaptability. Modern workspaces need to have needs catered to employees. What I mean to say, again, modular furniture. Can you move them around so that you can have an all hands? Prashanti talked about, it can become an auditorium. Move the furniture around to have, employee engagement stuff. So flexibility and adaptability works. The other thing is, we talked about talent early on, where, future ready. If we are talking about AI, AR, VR, can we not make our infrastructure AR, VR ready? Integrating technology is, I think essential right now, but how can we make it future ready? So what we've also done is, of course, having those collaboration tools, etc. We also have digital boards, digital smart boards, collaboration boards. We are working on a digital wall. We are building an AI lab. So integrating technology. The other thing is, on the culture part, how do we incorporate what the values of the organization are we trying to drive? And that's where comes the branding. So ensuring in your workspace design that culture in form of branding is available, so that people have that feeling of association. And I'm very old school. For me, having a brick and mortar building, gives you a sense of belongingness. And yes, you can do a lot with the virtual reality spaces, etc. But I am very old school. So branding, physical elements, seeing it, touching and feeling makes a lot of difference. And I think the last bit that I would want to talk about is the whole feedback mechanism. Creating a workspace that evolves with employees' feedback makes a lot of difference. It gives that even employees own that space. It's not somebody designed it for them, but they are also building it along. So those were my inputs.
Thank you so much for that meticulous explanation also. Thank you so much. Pooja, you do a lot of work for women in tech, and there's a lot of work that goes on to support or bring in policies. What kind of infrastructure or policies do you think need to be in place and are non-negotiable to support women in tech?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me and hearing me out. So
Pleasure to have you on board as well. Thank you.
thank you so much. So I think I always talk about diversity, and I'm very happy to see the diversity directly on the panel. So pleased to share the panel discussion with you all. So when I talk about infrastructure, of course, we have been working with the customers and having the tours of their offices every now and then, and they have fabulous modular infrastructure in place. Leading SheWork, I happen to also travel outside India and see some workplaces in Australia and in UK specifically. And I would really want to share something which, while we are building the GCCs, which is for the tomorrow's talent. So there was a concept called Crèche building. So in Australia, when I visited in TCS, okay, so I saw a space wherein a mother and father, so both of them have the kids, right? So they brought their kids in because of their summer vacations. They brought their kids to their office. They were playing with the other kids, and the parents were working. So that was very impressive for me. And those crèches were AI enabled. So there was a phone where in case they want their father or mother to be attended, the helper actually ringed them. So that was really impressive. Then the ramps. Okay, so we talk about PWD, we talk about diversity in India, but are the infrastructure ready for them? So I actually saw the ramps wherein the people on wheelchair were easily, traveling to the different floors and sitting with all the people together. So this is how the inclusivity in the workplace happens. So of course, while we are focusing on women, hiring more women who can be part of GCCs, while we are talking about diversity, of course it's the mandate, and companies are experiencing good performance, especially for the women coming back from the breaks, the maternity breaks or the sabbatical breaks. If we can build such infrastructure, we would definitely, along with the return on investment in GCCs, we will also focus on return on area. So that is something which I would love to share.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pooja. We'll talk to you more on measuring impact as well. Prashanti, let's talk a little bit about how infrastructure supports talent and inclusion. She gave an example of the same. Now, if a workplace is a tool to attract and retain diverse talent, how do we then support it? What are some people first elements you've embedded into your workspace, especially to ensure psychological safety or inclusion?
I'll share something that I find inspiring, and coincidentally, it's part of AXA's people strategy. Even if I had read it elsewhere, I would still be inspired. It's 2 words: care and dare. So that's AXA's people strategy. So simple, and I really resonate with that. So we decided to take that. That's the group people strategy. So as a GCC, we said we'll latch on to that. It's so good. So we said in our workspace, we will create spaces that care and help our people to dare. So that was our starting point. And then we of course took into account what are the wellness needs of our people, accessibility. And I'm not just talking about, the usual context that it's spoken in, but accessibility for people to be themselves, to meet other people, to create their own careers. Accessibility as a whole new topic, accessibility for collaboration. So that's what that's the direction we took. So our spaces reflect that, and some of those design elements, quite similar to what Vijay already shared, create open spaces where people can just huddle together and, not the typical linear kind of a workspace. But other than that, I think what we did was we got, we focused a lot more also on mind health. So I'm just calling out something that I find quite good to share about our workspace. So mind health was one of our key priorities. I'm not talking about accessible bathrooms. I believe that is a basic. So if you've done that, great. If you've not, why not? But it's really basic. That should be there. But mind spaces, like let's say a calming zone. So we created oxygen rooms, and I learned about the calming zone 5 years ago. So when we did it, I was like, okay, please let's not pat ourselves on the back. Someone did it 5 years ago. We're just copying. But I think we did those kind of spaces where people with different needs. It doesn't have to be neurodiverse. I, as an individual who may not identify as neurodiverse, still may feel the need, and I often do, to go into a space of calm and sit there by myself and reflect. So I think creating those spaces for our people was quite key for us. And it's amazing to see the way people have adopted that, and people just took to it quite naturally. And it's wonderful when you see people actually using those spaces and the creativity that it is fueling. So I think it's inclusion, yes, but I think it's bigger, broader than that.
Yeah, mental health is a broad
Yeah, the
topic.
culture that you're trying to
You
build.
should consider renting those spaces. I would definitely
wish we
rent it
could
first.
if-
I'll first in line.
Yeah, if we didn't have data privacy topics to deal with, we would. Yeah.
Okay. Vijeta, how do you see shared services environment supporting different talent cohorts? Now there's Gen Z coming into workspace. Eventually they'll take up leadership position. They might have already. And then there are returning women professionals, mothers who want to come back to the workforce after a career gap. I spoke in my previous panel that career gap is not necessarily bad. Of course, there's so much to learn from what you do in those gap years as well. How do your shared services environment support the same?
So first, I'll address more relevant from the topic perspective with the workspace, and then I'll get into the other areas eventually. So from workspace perspective, we talked about it. The Gen Zs like their own space, and we have been able to have those. Like Prashanti talked about the calming zone. We have the wellness zone. For returning women professional, and most of them, these are essentially mothers, returning back to the workforce. So what we have been able to create is a mother's room where there is their need of pumping and storing. We have enabled that. It's a hygienic place for them, and also they are returning mothers. It's a place where they can put up their feet for some time, because they're trying to prove again and again to themselves and to others that they have returned and completely returned. So those are, and our workspace, the way we have designed is it's a 50,000 square feet per floor, and it is a very open area. You can literally walk around and clock in your steps. So you will see a lot of Gen Zs who would be walking around and ensuring that that happens. So that's on the workspace perspective, Vaishnavi. What other things are we doing as an organization to enable Gen Zs and returning women is flexibility, right? Even Gen Zs like their time. So flexible work options are there. Similarly, returning women professional have a lot of caregiving responsibility. If we are providing those flexible options, they get seamlessly integrated without getting overwhelmed. Mentorship and sponsorship. I think via the ERGs, we have mentorship programs where a seasoned professional gets tied up with Gen Z, which is a young professional who has come into the workforce, and how they learn in terms of navigating those organization spaces. Not literally spaces, but organization as such. Sponsorship. Returning women to after a gap to the workforce, they need that sponsorship for them to get reintegrated, to get the right set of visibility, and get right set of skilling. Talking about skilling, a lot of training and development programs. Gen Zs, they are so technically advanced. We have curated programs at Ecolab which focuses upon digital skills. So how can we make our employees future ready? Similarly, from returning women, there are curated programs to get them reskilled and upskilled. So those are some of the areas, and of course there are networking opportunity, there would be reward and recognition, and you have it. So that is the way, at least from Ecolab perspective, we are enabling both Gen Zs and returning women professionals.
Thank you so much for that insight. Amit, the need is that talent has to be scaled. The demand for talent has to scale accordingly and across multiple geographies. But you also have to maintain cohesiveness. Now, in this scenario, how do you scale the infrastructure as well seamlessly?
Yeah, I think that's a fairly complex task.
Is okay.
If you look at, the strategy, it kind of varies. We are now into a model with nearshoring. We're talking about offshoring centers. We're talking about tier 1, tier 2, and in certain cases, satellite disaster recovery centers. And this is a purely part of a cost strategy as well as growth strategy. So it's very important to create a replication. I would call it a brain and a heart game. So very important, first of all, it has to be a short thing. It has to be part of a game plan. It has to be not done because it's an experiment. Because this has long-turning effects on an organization. And in order to kind of stitch this together, it's extremely important to look at the first thing, which is the heart, which means it's very important to have a consistent set of purpose-driven culture, very clear set of values from a GCC perspective in an organization, which you can take from, let's say, a Bhubaneswar to a Delhi to a, any other place to a Poland. The consistency of behaviors, ways of working, mindset needs to be standardized. It needs to be part of training program. That's the core of before we even look at creating an infrastructure around it. Then, of course, comes the intuitive part, but technology, communication, information availability, IoT platforms, cloud, very strong cybersecurity compliances, those becomes the norm. And what has made it more complex, Vaishnavi, is kind of replicating that structure, not only in the offices, but also making sure a part of it travels to home with the hybrid structure. So that needs to be done as part of that. And I think these are two most important aspects. But I'd like to kind of close in terms of keeping cohesiveness. It's also very important to ensure that an employee has similar experiences at home, especially in a hybrid setup, or in a satellite, or in a tier 2 versus that in, let's say, a large GCC HQ based kind of a setup. And this also calls that the ways of working, the management practices, the nuances of how we deal with at different leadership level with every colleague has to be normalized. And once that's in place, I think it becomes very much an ingrained part of it.
So stay with me right here. You definitely spoke about how to maintain cohesiveness, and then the geographies are not just changing in terms of cities, but also the workspaces themselves becomes very agile, flexible. Now, to this mixture, how do you embed digital twins or smart technologies in workspace planning?
Well, I think it starts again with especially if we go back to the very first point about uncertainty is the only certainty. It's information at the hand. So it's very important we look at creating the right kind of tech setups as a base. They need to be consistent across, and that will really drive the ways of working, the nuances of how all employees will have a consistent experience across. Part to that is where, the intricacies of dealing with each other needs to be normalized, and that will come through a very strong L&D program and with leadership mandates on how to actually lead the way. and it has to be then tied together to the culture that one is looking at. I think that's.
Thank you so much, Amit. Vijeta, any ESG aligned workspace design choices that you've made that you want to share with us?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Okay.
We are a sustainability organization. Ecolab is a sustainability organization. So before we designed our workspace, our priorities and briefs were given. And I think a lot of the organizations are leaning towards such practices. So I think, what is the bare minimum is LEED standard. So we followed that any which ways. But what we have also done is, and again, I'm saying a lot of other organizations have also included that while designing their workspaces, is a biophilic design, right? In terms of looking at the ergonomics, the acoustics, the lighting, all of that. We've ensured that there are no offices or meeting rooms, blocking the light, natural light, so that having that natural light improves the productivity, affects the mental health a lot. The other thing that we did was a transparency in sourcing our material. So one of the mandates that we had was the policies in place that when we are sourcing material to build the workspace has to be sourced sustainably and ethically. We looked at the sustainability index for our vendor partners, etc., and then we got them onboarded. The other thing that we have been able to do from ESG perspective is, again, having an efficient HVAC system, which are smart so that the energy consumption is lower. The last thing that probably I'll talk about is, of course, smart sensor, lighting, and all of that is able to adjust with the daylight, our internal lighting. Again, reduces the energy consumption. The whole idea of Ecolab is, from our sustainability goal, is reducing that energy consumption. And we work with our business also to help them achieve their sustainability goals. So these are some of the aspects that we have been able to incorporate while designing our workspace.
But a thesis itself in designing a workspace is based on ESG.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is it easy? Of course not. But is it the right thing to do? Most definitely. I would agree with you on that. Prashanti, let's talk about data privacy also here. How do you maintain data privacy in these multiple setups, be it hybrid, remote, and you also have to ensure operational integrity? How do you deal with that? Talk to us about it.
I think anyone in this room would understand that topic, that it's not something easy to do. There's always something missing. There's always something you can do better on data privacy and compliance. But specifically for AXA, being an insurance company, we have access to a lot of PMI information, private medical information, healthcare, PNC, and life insurance is what the teams here do. Of course, let me put it out there, we are now building capabilities to be a tech and data AI forward organization. So that will bring its own set of regulations that we have to adhere to. But what we have done is, from a physical arrangement perspective, teams that are interfacing with certain customer segments are arranged in a different way. Teams that interact with our policyholders, they require a high level of empathy, and beautiful use cases we have about how that matters. Having a cohort of people here and doing the same nature of work, when you put them together and they share experiences, there's a lot of richness in that. So we've done that. Our tech guys are in a space where they can collaborate and keep it agile. And so here we call it like communities, but we have an office in Morocco. They call it villages. So which is quite endearing. Who goes to a village now? Hardly, huh? So they have villages that they've set up, like Tech Village, Data Village. It's quite nice. So all these keeping it fresh, interesting concepts of how we've arranged it. That is the physical arrangement. But from an infrastructure perspective, we have really strong controls from an IT infrastructure perspective, as would most of the companies here or GCCs here. But in the pandemic, we realized that location flexibility doesn't mean we have to compromise on security. And we had to find ways to make that happen. And we're quite pleased that we got through that. And today we are able to really thrive. If one thing that came out of that, those 2 years is this, that we have the flexibility and the confidence that we can handle some situations much better without having to compromise. And I honestly believe that it's not for our employees to worry about, flexibility or security. They just need to be given the peace of mind because we have you covered through the setup that we are providing you. So that's really been
safe
our
space.
ethos. Yeah.
In all measures, absolutely. Thank you so much. But there's a question on AI first organizations that you spoke about. It's a very dystopian thing. We'll get there in a rapid fire. But before that, Pooja, I would like to talk to you. You spoke about these inclusive policies. Talk to us about how do you measure the impact of these policies? Are they working or are they just lip service in most cases?
So, I mean, of course, the companies are putting up a lot of policies when it comes to remote working, when it comes to hybrid working, when it comes to on-site working. Okay, and we have been promoting diversity. We've been promoting women back from the career break, having more diversity ratios at the mid-level, so that eventually it impacts at the leadership position. So of course it has been impacting at a very very high level, because the women's are getting more opportunities these days. They are getting to concentrate, like he said, home away from home. So if they're leaving the kids, they're coming down to office, they go back, they come again. Sometimes they leave early, they do their meetings, they have the infrastructure at the home, so conveniently they are able to pursue their careers, they are able to excel in their careers. And we do a lot of surveys while we are doing the women returnship programs, or say women staffing. So while we did the survey, we understood that the 35% of the diversity ratios which we impacted project level, after a year, 20% of the productivity was captured as an increase in creativity of a resource, or towards the project, and even towards the delivery. So that is an impact which policies, infrastructure, homely environment is bringing in an individual life.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you for bringing out that data point as well. All right, so rapid fire. Ready, everyone? Okay. I have 2 questions, so we will do a quick one. Prashanti and I got talking, and she gave me this idea. Of course, AI adoption is accelerating, but the flip side is employee sentiment is also becoming more sensitive to it. Now, as a leader, how should workplace design evolve? And what should a GCC leader get right today to keep a psychological safety with the adoption of AI among your employees as well? Shall I start with you, Amit? Quick reply.
Sure. I think this is definitely great question, first of all. When we talk about AI, it's not a high cloudy idea that we have to go after. It's extremely important for us as GCC leaders to really look at what's in it for me now, not what's in it for me for a long term. Look at only big problems. Many a time bureaucracy kills, execution or performance. So it's very important to look at bringing in co-creating AI used cases right from bottom up instead of a top down strategy, and make it as part of ways of working for people to come together in form of cohorts in safe spaces to actually play with it. If I could just maybe share a 30-second quick narrative. In one of the town halls, we were asked, what would you like to have, if you're given a wish list? The person said, I would like, an Aladdin jinn, or a humanoid robot, an AI assistant who can help me do my work better. I think the key underlying word is somebody who can come to support, make me deliver better so that I can grow and learn with it. And I think that's the spirit of AI, which if we are able to inculcate as GCC leaders, then our organization and the GCCs will grow immensely in terms of value creation.
Thank you so much. Prashant?
I think it's quite natural that people do see the uncertainty, and there is a sense of instability also. So I think in addition to what Amit just said, what we are trying to do is equip our leaders to lead with empathy, and not just, be very directive about it, say, this is the way it's going to go, and, you better fall in line. That's not going to work. That's one thing that I really want to share. So it's about
Say more
leadership.
about it. How do you equip them
Yeah. So we are having trainings for them, and we are building cohorts for the leaders themselves. So whether it's tech, whether it's data, whether it's ops. So what do your people need to hear from you at this stage? And then we are also forming tag teams between data, tech, and ops use cases, like you said. So an insurance expert comes together, tech gets a tech guy and a data expert, and we're doing these POCs, like quick sprint POCs. So then people see that actually my job can evolve. It doesn't have to become, redundant. In fact, I can deliver higher value from doing this. So I think, and this is not, we've not been doing this for years, to be honest. It's just like over the past year that we've really started exploring this, but we already see the benefit of it. So thank you.
Kudos to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just I'll add on to what Prashanti said on the empathy bit. We are actually practicing it in our leadership meeting. It starts with an empathy check-in. It's everybody around the table will go in and do the empathy check-in.
So give us an example of it. What
So
we
it
do.
is about when a GCC gets set up, the roles are moved, right? When roles are moved, there's an impacted team, right? Ensuring that we are sensitive and cognizant about how we portray growth vis-a-vis our colleagues who are in a different situation altogether. So on the same table, we have a growth area leader and a leader who has been impacted. We have to be empathetic around and do that empathy check-in. And, interestingly, I'm on the table, which is on the growth side. I have to share my bit of the empathy. And what do I share? I'm just wondering, what do I do? But it is when we onboard new employees, while we portray the great story of growth and opportunity within the GCC and all of that, we are also very cognizant in telling people that you have a colleague who will be getting impacted. So when you are having those conversations during the knowledge transfer, be empathetic about it. It's not just glorifying what you're going to do and how you're going to change with AI and improve the process and enhance that customer experience. Yes, we'll do all of that. But how do you communicate that? That is very, very important. So that's on the empathy bit.
Thank you so much, Vijayta. I have a different question for you. If cost wasn't a constraint, what would your ideal workspace look like in 2030?
Good question. So I would say, we do a session called Talent Mixer, okay? And wherein we invite the upcoming talents, the ongoing talents. So basically a mixture of Gen Zs, millennials, boomers, and everyone, okay? So these sessions we host, we invite some leaders to interact with them, okay? So hearing the ideas out from the Gen Zs to the millennials, you get to know a lot of things, okay? So in one of the session, one of the Gen Z asked, if I get a robot or if I get an AI assistant, okay, to showcase how, there is a low code, no code, AI is going to replace human. That is the buzz going on every now and then, and people are scared, okay, whether I'm going to, be out of the job or no, whether I'll be jobless. Let's save it as of now. So the Gen Zs think, why should I study today? Okay, if the companies are coming up with AI, they are anyway going to invest setting up the robots. Okay, I just have to put the command, and I'm going to get the code ready. So I think if the cost is not the constraint, the people of tomorrow would need everything ready-made. Okay, so we have seen the machines coming up. The cooking machines. They say you just say I want chole bhature. And you get step by step, you boil the choles, you put it in, and that is done. So I think if cost is not a constraint for the infrastructure tomorrow, to the world coming up tomorrow, they would need everything ready-made. So they'll just get up, just like the Richie Rich, the cartoon which we used to see when we were kids. Okay, they just have to get up and everything is done by AI.
I think that employee actually asked for agentic AI in simpler terms, and but not a dystopian far off reality. It's right here with us. Okay, one last rapid fire I'll take. What was the surprising thing that an employee asked in the last workspace design for you?
I think it's the humanoid robot.
Humanoid robot, yes, you spoke about in the town hall, right, Prashanti?
two things. What was surprising was how much our people cared about sustainability. That was very interesting. Second, there's this one person, and I know it's one person, who in the last 2 or 3 moves of our location continues to ask for a swimming pool. So maybe in 2030, we will have a virtual swimming
If
pool.
cost wasn't a constraint, definitely.
Yeah.
What a workplace to be in. There's a calming room, there's a swimming pool. Amazing.
You should visit. love it.
I will take you up on that offer. I'm not leaving. In front, there's witnesses also now. Yes, Vijayta?
So for us, I think it may not be radical for a lot of them. We are just a startup working in a 100-plus-year-old organization. So Nap Pods was one. The
Oh, fun.
other one was a pet-friendly zone. That can we bring our pet to work? And I will roll my eyes. I'm not a pet person, so
Okay.
pet-friendly zone.
Nap zone and pet friendly work. Yeah, I would love a pet friendly work as well.
Send them to AXA. We have a nap pod.
You have a nap pod too? That's fantastic.
Maybe that is my 2030. Maybe I will give in by that time.
I don't think cost will be a constraint by then. Not at all. Not at all. Let's close our eyes on that one. Anyway, thank you so much, panelists. It was more fun and so much learning to take away from. And I hope the audience also has a lot of learning. I'm sure a lot of them have questions. So they will be around and you can catch them up on tea. Thank you so much for your insights and for your time and for being on board for this conversation. And you've been a lovely audience. Thank you so much. I will hand over it back to you. Thank you.